R&B, 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 Russ and Blake for eternity. It's the R&B podcast. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Welcome back to R&B podcast with Russ, with Blake. And we got to thank God, of course. Thank God for allowing us to be here today, breathe another breath, see the sunlight, have another conversation, and address some things with y'all.
Yeah. Thank God for getting us back to this recording, through our travels, through our daily walks. We find ourselves back to be able to rejoice for our life, for our breath, and for our thoughts and ideas. And this medium we get to use to work out these ideas. So, yeah, I'm feeling very grateful today as well, Blake. I like how you started that off.
And what was it? Last week we talked about fear. Was that last week?
Last week we talked about self-love.
Oh, last week
The
was
best
self-love.
love.
Of course. How
Mhm.
could I forget?
Yep.
The basis of one love, the self-love. Yes. So 2 weeks ago was fear. Last week was self-love. This week we're going to talk about the foundation of love, the foundation of relationships, in my opinion, which is trust, which goes hand in hand with honesty. Um, trust can take a while to develop. Some people don't feel like they can trust anyone, and your trust can easily be broken, and that can cause a lot of, I guess, stress in relationships. So, just in terms of our friendship, we're making this podcast here, and it's easy for me to work alongside Russ because I can trust that he's gonna do the things that he tells me he needs to do, and he's going to meet deadlines, and he's not gonna make excuses. And I've known Russ long enough that that trust is very strong in a lot of different realms, and I don't have any anxiety when it comes to trusting him to do those things. And that's just a quick example, and as far as our relationship with each other and how we're going to segue into this conversation, because trust, again, important in relationships, but not only friendships, not only romantic relationships, but also professional relationships and really interactions that you're going to have with anyone. So, Russ, as far as you and your trust on a daily basis, do you feel like you trust a lot of people?
I wish I could say yes, man. I wish I could say I'm a person that's able to just trust everybody to do what they say or be who they say they are. But honestly, I'm one of those people that's kind of it has to be proven to me
Yeah.
over time, just because like we are in such a competitive environment, and I feel like sometimes for human beings, if they see a quicker route or an easier route that's kind of maybe more deceitful to take, that naturally sometimes we take that route.
Right.
So
Especially if that route has paid off in the past.
exactly.
They're more likely to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they know it's wrong, when you know that you'll succeed or you think you'll succeed with a certain, I guess, strategy, it's only natural that that's the strategy that you'll choose, especially if it seems easiest.
Exactly. I'm a firm believer that if you want a building that's built to last, your foundation has to come with a lot of minute details and attention to those details, hard work and genuine accountability. But like I'm saying, we all want to get to the top. We watch these celebrities all day. We watch these people who have made it to the top all day. And I know that I know sometimes the pride can be like, man, if I could take a shortcut to get to that point, I would love to do it. So sometimes when I work with people, I kind of have that in the back of my mind that I can't just be naive. I can't just give them my whole trust right away until I know them for a while and I see how they operate and how they move.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me. Early in my career with nursing, I had a very trusting I guess, mindset going into situations with my patients because I felt, oh, if I expect them to trust me, I need to trust them also.
Mm.
But, when people are in the hospital, it's a stressful situation. Oftentimes patients aren't thinking straight. And there's a lot of different factors involved. So I quickly learned that me as the professional, sometimes I have to be a little bit hesitant in trusting the patient to do what I know is right, and for them to be honest with me. And so not having a guard up going into those situations, but
Mm-hmm.
just understanding that there is progress to be made, and you can't go in with 100% blind trust and just give people the benefit of the doubt, because then you might be in for an unpleasant surprise.
Yeah.
And so, developing those relationships with the people that I take care of, I have 12 hours out of my shift to get things accomplished, but I can't just start my day at 7 a.m. thinking that we're on good terms, trusting situation. I have to test the waters a little bit and be realistic about what it is I'm going into.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of information about people before I actually meet them, which is beneficial for me to kind of gauge, because I might know if they have behavioral health history, or if they've had any history of not having good relationships with their caregivers in the hospital, because a lot of these people have been hospitalized before,
Mm-hmm.
and gives me a little bit of background. But I take that with a grain of salt,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, I have to have discernment, and I do give people opportunity to show me their best side,
Oh yeah.
and I'll often get report from another nurse, and they'll kind of give me a heads up on poor behavior or things that they feel I should be aware of, I should look out for. And for a short period of time in my career, after having some bad situations, those things I took a little bit too much to heart. And
Mm-hmm.
I would go in almost fearful, because I know that they've had issues in the past with aggression or whatever the situation may be. But then I also realized that my approach is different than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for the heads up. But at the same time, I'm going into this situation probably different than you did. And I'm going to hope for the best, plan for the worst, but also give myself and the other person an opportunity to have a healthy, trusting relationship as we interact with one another.
Man, that's huge, and if anyone ever wondered what it really means to develop a clinical lens, what you just touched on is kind of the foundation.
Mm.
Because same with me, a lot of times when we have students transitioning from other schools coming to our school for more of a therapeutic environment, we hear about their aggressive behaviors, what they've done, these fights and these different moments that they've had. And sometimes the staff that are working with them can be like, "Oh my gosh, did you hear about the new student that we're getting?"
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes then you meet them and you're like, you're the one that they said was
Yeah.
terrorizing everyone. Like, you're
Right.
super chill, and maybe it was some other variables that were at play here.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you're actually trying to work to heal a person, you can't have biases. You really, preconceived notions and biases are gonna stifle the healing process.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You almost need, with a clinical lens, to meet someone for the first time and be like, you know what? Show me who you want me to see.
Right.
I don't even care if it's a mask. I don't even care if it's 100% facade. Show me who you want me to see, and then I'm going to start seeing the consistency of it. Because over time, your true self is the only thing that can show,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really interesting getting pre-reports on people I haven't met and then working with them for a month or years even,
Yeah.
and just being like, man, it's funny what they tried to tell me about you before I met
Right,
you.
right. Because then at the end of it, you ultimately feel like you have a much better understanding of that person than anyone really prepared you for, right?
Hmm.
And like you said, it's almost funny, but kind of sad. Just like, oh man, these kind of rumors, you could say, are getting passed around about this person, and they aren't really getting a fair chance in a lot of situations, because they have a record and it's following them,
Yeah.
right? And that's reality, and that's why it is so important to have discernment and make good decisions and be consistent in how you operate, because people will hold things against you, and that's only natural.
Mm.
But fair, maybe not, depending on the severity of what it is that took place. But that's just something that you have to expect. So, interacting with youth, it is sometimes difficult to help them understand how significant their decisions really are.
Mm.
Because just us two, we've had some mistakes that we've made in our past where, the outcome wasn't as severe as it possibly could have been.
No, there was not a narrative created from our
Yeah.
choice, and that's the
Right, right,
biggest
right,
thing. No
right,
one wrote
right.
down a narrative about what happened.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And then also there's the flip side where sometimes people can do things that are pretty awful, or I'm sorry, they can do things that really aren't that bad
Mm-hmm.
and then have kind of severe consequences just depending on who decided to I guess ring the alarm
Mm.
or who was there to witness the situation, how it was interpreted. Um, you know, we often see in sports where the person who reacts is the one who gets the punishment, right? And
Correct.
that happens in real life all the time. Somebody defending themselves or defending someone else, and when people are around to see what's happening, it looks like person A is really doing something wrong to person B when person B did something that really put person A in a defensive mode and person A is trying to protect themselves and possibly other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then person A doesn't always have the opportunity to explain the situation. And then person B might get out of this situation unscathed.
Mm-hmm.
And again, fair, not at all, but that's just a reality that we all have to be prepared to face as we interact with one another.
Man, and now that you bring it up, and I'm actually thinking about this, it's really interesting because I say I say that I subscribe to the philosophy of one love. I say I subscribe to we are all one, but then I say that I don't just trust people off the back. So now I feel like there's some type of rift right there because how
Yeah.
come I feel like we're all one being, but I also can't necessarily trust anyone?
Well, I'm not going to speak for you, but I would
And not anyone, but strangers.
yeah, yeah. I think we have to look at it as being balanced along a spectrum, again, as with everything,
Mm,
right? So it's not 0% trust with
sure.
these people. Maybe you're only giving them 10% or even 25%,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still a little bit of distrust or hesitancy that goes into it just as I guess, a way of protection.
Yeah.
So that's you being smart about the situation. Now, if you don't have any trust for someone, then I would hope there's a reason and they've already done something that you've witnessed.
Yeah.
If you've heard about someone doing something, then maybe they only get like 1% of trust. But
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone deserves to have a little bit of trust instilled if you have any plan of having a decent relationship or interaction with that person.
Yeah.
Because if you don't trust them at all, then you probably don't need to be around them because they sound highly unpredictable and possibly dangerous.
Yeah. And I think it also goes back to how I was saying the conditions of just our environment, because oftentimes I think that it's that people will get put in a situation where they've been caught or it's time for them to take accountability and tell the truth that they lie. And I used to do that all the time when I was younger. My mom's going to watch this. She's going to be like, hallelujah, because I used to just get in trouble and I would lie until there wasn't a route out anymore. I would go every direction until you tried to actually figure me out because I didn't want to be seen as someone who was bad. I didn't want to be seen as someone who did the wrong thing. So I would try to lie about everything. And I think I just know that until somebody really like gets to the point where they understand that you can't bend the fabric of reality and you have to live in truth if you want this world to work with you. It takes a lot to get to that point.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because just interacting with my friend's kid like 3 days ago, she was lying about stuff that didn't matter. And we were like, why are you lying? It's okay to say. She's like, I didn't say that. And we were like, okay. And I think it's funny when we choose to lie because in hindsight, there's never a good time to lie. Like usually it's going to show the truth or it's going to catch up to you and it's going to make you look kind of goofy. But some people would argue with that and say that the truth is not always appropriate.
Yeah.
Not all details need to be shared. But when things are on a need to know basis, that is going to hurt the trust in the relationship. And if you're dealing with someone that has any capability of finding out the truth, then you just have to decide whether or not you want to be the bad guy at the end when they find out what reality is versus what you told them. And the setting of a lie can be very, very important, because I've been lied to at the hospital, and that is 100% unacceptable to me, because that's a very serious setting where I feel that I need to know accurate information to do my job to the best of my abilities. And if I'm given misinformation from a patient, that's one thing. Misinformation from a colleague, that's another thing. But misinformation from a superior can really put me in a state of paranoia to question, where are my resources? Like, how am I going to make sure that I'm doing things properly as far as our policies, our procedures, and making things work efficiently as well. And having that environment of trust so that I don't have to worry about other people doing the right thing as I try to complete these tasks and take care of my patient. And that can be translated very easily into a team setting as well, whether it's basketball, football, any team sport that you want to discuss. You have to have trust in your teammate to carry out their role. Whether you're a point guard and you need the center to secure the paint, whether you're a quarterback and you need your receiver to run the correct route. Being able to have that trust is going to allow for a lot more success in whatever it is that you're doing in a team environment. And that's one thing that I personally have appreciated in my sports experience, being able to translate that into a professional setting. And I've seen a lot of other former athletes be able to do that the same way. And being able to work alongside former athletes, that teamwork usually is a lot more seamless than it would be otherwise.
Man, so true. You know, they just had the NCAA March Madness championships, the men and women's. And as I watch these games, I study the officials because it's what I do. And in the women's game, a lot of people on social media are like, oh, this officiating right now, they have their different opinions about what's a good call and what's not a good call. When I'm watching these games, I just keep thinking, does this crew still trust one another? That's the only thing I'm looking for, is, do they still trust one another? I could care less about my opinion on their judgment. I don't always have the best angle from my home and the cameras that are broadcasting it, but I can see if they still trust one another. And that's usually how I can tell how professional these people truly are, right? Because an unprofessional crew will lose trust early, and you see it. You see people start to extend their coverage and call in other people's primary zones, and you're like, wow, they just lost trust in each other. And then you see things unravel. You see rifts come up, and you see arguments that don't need to happen, and you see players get uneasy, coaches get uneasy, and it all stems from that 3-person crew like losing trust in the system. It's so interesting. You need a strong core. You need a strong core. And another thing that's been interesting in the last few years, since there's been so much political debates going on, is that a good portion of our society that historically has had a lot of trust in our government has started to lose trust. And I honestly feel bad for them. Whether whatever I believe doesn't matter, but I feel bad that a lot of people that historically like had faith in it and trust in the system start to feel like they can't, because I know how much of an uneasy place that can put you in.
And it's a lot different if you never had trust in something versus that trust being broken.
Exactly. Because I don't wish that upon anyone. I want you to feel like your environment loves you and is telling you the truth. I want you to feel like, whether it's true or not, I want you to feel like you're being told the truth out here. And that gets tough.
Definitely. Because without trust, without that kind of foundation of being able to believe that the information you're being fed is accurate, that puts you in a state of paranoia, and that increases fear.
And it makes it more dangerous for all of us. It's like, that's kind of why I'm sad that they started to not trust the government, because now I'm like, whoa, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that feeling of not feeling like you can trust this environment?
Because I know you and I feel like maybe because we're minorities, there's certain parts of government norms that we don't trust just naturally, whether it was taught to us or things that we've experienced. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's different if you've spent 30 years of life having this devotion and this trust and thinking that there's this safety net for you to fall back on, and then that net's just taken away, and it really changes your whole reality. And especially when it comes to your perspective of the world or your perspective of our country or even just your community, that really changes how you operate on a daily basis, whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's also important for you to develop your own community and your own tight knit group of people that
Mm.
you can trust, because when it comes down to it, politicians and law enforcement agents, you don't know those people personally.
Yep.
They can get up and talk in front of a panel and answer questions and write up whatever articles or however it's going to be presented to you. But you have to also be able to understand the difference between blind trust and a pure trust, and also just having trust within your actual relationship with someone. We trust a lot of people we don't have any type of relationship with sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be a dangerous place to be in.
Man.
And we've kind of been taught to act that way, I guess, in certain situations if you think about it. And that's why it's not so crazy when you talk to people that have no trust in the system, no trust in the government. But that's just a very difficult way to operate as well, having that high state of fear and paranoia every single day with every single interaction. Has to be, hopefully, something that you trust
Mm-hmm.
that is a regular part of your life. And
Man.
if not, I feel for you, because that is not any level of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
There's no comfort there.
For sure. And I think that goes back to some of my trust issues I was talking about at the beginning of this, is because I understand that not only does power corrupt, but sometimes the thirst for gaining power can corrupt. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that we're free in this society so we can be sovereign individuals, meaning that we basically are supposed to govern ourselves.
Right.
And you can gather a group of like minded individuals to, talk to and come up with plans to create whatever it is you believe is supposed to be in this environment as you guys are governing yourselves. That's why I don't really ever trip too much on these powers that be and who I'm supposed to trust and whatnot, because no, I'm my own body of government and my facilities are up to me, to develop my own peace and to develop my own, routines to have my life be the best it can.
Yeah, within reason, right?
What do you mean?
Well, because people could maybe take that to an extreme. I don't know what your opinion is on a sovereign citizen that kind of makes all their own rules, and I don't need a driver's license. I know how to drive. That doesn't make sense, and these are my rules. There's people that operate in that way.
Yeah.
And I guess that's a liberating way to live, but it's
Yeah.
not really conducive to society and having a safe environment for your community, because then we could all be operating on different rules, and those don't often overlap very smoothly.
Sure. And I think that gets down to like the core of what this free society was supposed to be. It's like we can all be in our own area doing our own thing freely. As we start to mingle with each other, we need to have enough empathy to know that that's another sovereign human out here with me. I need to kind of create parameters now so I don't impede upon their freedom and they won't impede upon mine. And now we can be free.
Yeah.
But we've never done that well as a country. We think that we need to impose our will on other people's freedom and vice versa. And then we find ourselves just, complaining and getting into arguments.
And sometimes we feel like in order for ourselves to be completely free, there might have to be some restrictions to other people's freedoms.
Or to validate our beliefs, we have to make other people believe it.
Right.
And it's like, why? If your beliefs are working for you, then do you.
Yes, and that's a great point to bring up, because when we talk about trust and we talk about relationships, the most important relationship is the one with yourself, right? That's why we talked about self-love last week. And you have to be able to trust yourself. And the only reason, or the only way that you can trust yourself, is developing habits and routines that you show yourself that you are able to carry out on a daily basis, so that you can show yourself you're capable of accomplishing tasks and achieving goals, and doing great things. And if you don't trust yourself to do anything, then nobody else is going to trust you. And it's going to be a lot more difficult to have good relationships with anybody in any situation. So, developing that trust with yourself can be difficult because we all make mistakes, and sometimes it's difficult for us to forgive ourselves. And we might question our ability to have self control. And I think self control is the foundation of us developing that trust with ourselves. And I know I've been in situations, I'm sure you have, where it seems like someone's projecting their emotions onto you, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I can only imagine that that can happen when someone has a lack of self control. And so they don't trust themselves, therefore, they don't trust other people because they are assuming they also don't have self control. Right.
I think everything that a person does within their mind becomes their reality. So the way that you live, you're going to assume other people are living. And that could go back to why I said I didn't trust people early on, because I know I was so untrustworthy for the majority of my life so far. I feel like I've just started getting a hang of this, like every single detail matters and needs to be truthful for me to feel free. Just started to kind of understand that. So that could be a reason why it was hard for me to just accept people's word.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I see that. And I've been in a similar situation, I guess. I've always been an honest person, I would say. But I think in terms of the consistency again and knowing that I'll do the right thing in certain situations, even as simple as like with me and Cheez-Its. I eat too many Cheez-Its at a time. So I'm like, I don't want to buy a box of Cheez-Its because I know I'll eat too many. I don't have the self-control, right? So you have to set yourself up for success as well, because sometimes there are certain situations that put us in less control, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to my cousin earlier today. I've never been to a strip club in my whole life, and I don't fully understand married people going to strip clubs. And that stems because of a self-control thing, I think. And in that environment, I don't know how you could interact appropriately.
No, it's in its nature not appropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I do know people who, within their relationship, like the girl doesn't care if the guy goes to strip club,
yeah.
and then girls go to strip clubs for fun, I guess, as well. And that's just not something I've ever had any interest in doing because it doesn't seem like it's going to set me up for success.
Yeah.
And I'm also not that interested in it because I love you, wifey.
Yeah, 100% true. And that is, I think, the basis of some people not trusting each other in their relationship because they question the self-control of their partner, right? And I think a lot of times that's why people will poke and test one another with little tiny things. Like, are you going to demonstrate self-control in this moment? Because if you fail this moment, then the bigger moment I can't trust you in, right?
Which, is that fair to do?
I don't know, because if we're trying to build a home, if we're trying to build a whole life, I do think that people are going to need to be reassured that you're not going to just go AWOL or that you're not going to turn into a whole other person when things start to get difficult. So I do understand the little tests. Sometimes I don't agree that people should be tested, but, we need proof. Sometimes.
And I think people are more inclined to test each other when their trust has already been broken, whether it's with that individual or with the past.
Right? Which can come from like parents. It can come from upbringing. It can come from so much. And anyone who's in this society knows, you know off rip when you meet somebody who has a hard time trusting.
Yeah.
And it can get weird because now that you bring that point up, I'm like, some people can test too much to where you're like, all right, you're exhausting because you think that the whole world is out to get you and you can't relax.
Yeah.
And that's not cool. Nobody wants to be around that energy.
I think that happens with I hope nobody gets mad at me for this, but with a lot of women that have, experience bad relationships with men.
Sure.
And then they get in a relationship with a good guy and they're like, well, this happened to me. Like, this is my trauma and that's why I feel this way. And you have to understand that because it's fair. But also, if you expect to get into a new healthy relationship with a new person, you do have to give them a little bit of leeway and let that guard down a little bit. We talked about the percentage of trust you give them. Yeah, that you can't give them 100% because it's just not feasible because of what you've gone through. We get that. Maybe 50%, but if you're going in with 5% trust with someone that you think you love, then it's probably not going to give you a very good chance of success.
Yeah. And, since you bring that point up, I would say if you're having a hard time showing any trust to the people that you meet, that might be a key indicator that you should look into doing some type of therapy. Because I think ultimately what that means is that you haven't accepted like the reality that you're living in. You don't believe that these details of the world matter and that you can trust them, and that usually shows like your disconnect, and that's what therapy is there to do, is to get you back connected with the processes of the world. We live in a reality. Everybody's perceiving a different thing, but there's one thing that happened.
And at that point in time it's probably attached to some trauma as well.
Exactly. Right? So it's like people will try to get into a relationship hoping to gain this trust that they've been missing their whole life. And that's very unfair to the person you're talking with.
Right.
Super unfair, because they're not trained to try to get your traumas and these experiences you've had. They're not trained to help you cope through it. They're just trying to meet someone they love.
I don't know. Somebody might watch this and think that you're trained to fix them up.
That's a whole nother topic, but it's like, and you could, I mean, if you genuinely meet someone that you're like, oh my gosh, I see myself being with you forever. I want you to have my kids, and I just want to live with you and build a home. And you come with a lot of trauma. I think it's beautiful to maybe try to help that person. But if it's starting to exhaust and expend your energy, you got to think about yourself,
So I want people on both sides of this to think about it, right? Because we don't want anybody to think that we're saying someone that has too much trauma can't be loved, right?
Exactly, because that's not true.
That's not true at all. But the person with that trauma does have some work to do on their own before they have an opportunity to be in a good relationship.
Yeah, accountability, right? And that comes with the trust. If I don't see you being accountable with your past to help both of us out in this relationship, then it's hard to trust.
Right.
It's hard to trust.
And all the weight can't fall on that other person who's entering your life that has this history of trauma, because that's not their role. Their role is to love you and accept what's happened to you and hopefully grow with you. But nobody's going to fix you up. And it's just not how it works. And so, again, trusting yourself in order to have a good relationship with yourself and therefore with other people. And that trust is what's going to develop your self-confidence. That's going to develop your self-love. And then you're going to have the discernment to decide whether or not you're going to give that similar trust to other people. Yeah.
For sure.
Now, the development of this trust has to have the right environment, right? So I think that there's some selflessness that goes into trusting someone, because it's not all about me. I'm thinking about that other person. I'm thinking about what they may or may not do. I'm thinking about what they have done, and I'm thinking about how I feel towards them. So if it's just the me show, you're never going to trust anybody.
Right.
Because you want everybody else to understand you before you give yourself an opportunity to understand them. And so you're building this wall because you're only worried about this one room when there's a whole house that you need to go explore.
That's a great way to put that.
How do you think people can change their mindset to really understand each other and understand other people and put other people first so that they can in turn be understood themselves?
Man, and that comes back to something we talked about in the first few of our episodes. I talked about how growing up in Phoenix, I always watched Steve Nash. Steve Nash won 2 MVPs because he got other people involved in the game.
Yeah.
This is why he was the best player in the entire NBA for 2 seasons. Debatable. Kobe fans, I understand. I don't want to go there. But 2 seasons, he was called the best player in the NBA because he got other people involved. I think people would be mind blown if they saw how much their life would change if they started trying to focus on others. Because what you put out resonates back to you, right? Like that is a principle of our universe.
Right.
It's the energy. So, I mean, I honestly think try it out. Try out just trying to enhance someone else's day or someone else's
Yeah.
moment once and watch the profound effect that it comes back to you with.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I like using financial terms in relation to personal things as well. And you think about your risk to reward ratio. Oftentimes, you being selfless and you being kind and you doing something for someone does not come with much risk. And there's a lot of potential for the reward. And it's like the worst thing that could happen is they're not appreciative. Hopefully you're not going out of your way to do something that's going to put you at risk or make you vulnerable, right? There has to be a little bit of balance in what it is that you are offering to do for someone that you have not necessarily developed a high level of trust for yet. But at the same time, you taking that leap of faith and you being courageous and having that confidence within yourself, knowing that you're doing something good and knowing that this is going to be something that helps you grow, whether it be just the mindset that you're in or down the road that action being reciprocated. You're often going to have a better chance of having a good response when you go out of your way to do something good.
Yeah, and I think you are stumbling upon an idea that only a small group of people truly believe in, because if you think about tithing with the church, or you think about people who believe in tithing, they 10% of what they got that month they give. A lot of people are like, nah, they are upset because, the church is trying to take everybody's money. They just want your money. No, the idea is that you're down to give some of your money. You're not like greedy, 100%, I need this. No, if you're down to give 10%, they believe God blesses you in multitudes. And there's people that really live by this, and they would tell you, my money started to grow exponentially once I wasn't I need all of it. I gave some of it, and more of it ended up coming back to me. I believe this is a principle of the universe, but only some people believe in it. The richest man of Babylon, they talk about this. They talk about giving 1/10 of your purse. All these churches talk about it. Charity in general, philanthropy. Like, there's people that understand that when you give, you get. But honestly, when you come from a place where you're trying to hoard everything and stack up as much as you can, it's really hard to open yourself up to giving.
And I used to think that giving had to be like purely altruistic. Like, you have to be giving to just know it's out of the goodness of your heart and you don't expect anything in return. But really, giving and being good is good regardless of the purpose behind it, right? And some people do expect something in return, and you can or cannot agree with that, whatever. But at the end of the day, they're still doing something good. And so I kind of was in this bitter state during the pandemic where I felt like my profession was just this basically like charity work, being altruistic, like doing things that I would never do for anyone, but I'm doing it every day, like helping these people. And then every once in a while you'd have like a travel nurse come through, and they're making more money than you, and sometimes they would make comments about money, and that would really just leave a bad taste in my mouth. I'm like, oh, they're just here to make money. They're just here because it's a job. And now I realize most people do jobs to make money, and I can't judge someone for the profession they're in, and I can't judge someone wanting to be compensated for their efforts. And so that was a big perspective change that I've had as I've grown up and had more experience within my profession, just because you can't expect everyone to have the same intentions as you. And you really can't hold the whole world to the same standard that you hold yourself to if you expect to operate at a higher level, right? Because not everyone in the world is going to operate at the high frequency. That's just simple. So I expect to perform higher than the average person. I expect my intentions to be pure, and I expect these things of myself, and I trust myself to maintain those intentions and those expectations, and I trust myself to perform under those conditions. And I do that on a consistent basis so that I can in turn give people the opportunity to follow. Lead by example, and don't expect too much out of other people, and just expect the most out of myself.
Yeah.
Right.
True. And it's funny because now I'm starting to think about how what's the difference between trust and faith? What do you think is the difference
I
between
think they're
trust and faith?
synonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the benefits of religion. They say walk by faith, not by sight. So you trusting in God, trusting that there is a God, trusting that God is going to answer your prayers and give you the resources and bless you with blessings. That gives you the opportunity to trust other people and trust yourself and develop those healthy relationships, because people that don't have anything that they have faith in, like, oh, I don't have faith in humanity, like I don't have faith in myself to get this done, or, oh, I don't have faith in my partner to come home on time and help me with the dishes, and I don't have faith in my neighbor to not park behind my car. Like little things like that, they just add up, and you feel like you can't trust anybody or anything because it's like a cascading effect.
Man.
But I think that negative and positive energy move in very similar fashion. So it's just what's going to start that momentum, and what are you going to input into that equation, and how are you going to alter it, because you can either add or you can subtract. And I think it really is that simple.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I've seen that eat people up in my own life, not trusting the world, not trusting people. It can put you in such a paranoid state.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen, and it just
Yeah.
looks so uncomfortable. I would rather get ripped off a few times than be paranoid about everything I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
you got to move on. You're not here long enough to live in a state of fear and paranoia about every person that you come into contact with. It's just not cool.
And you can't put yourself down or call yourself stupid for being taken advantage of, too.
For
Because at the end of the day, the other person's in the wrong. Maybe you shouldn't have been as trusting, but that's not your fault, right? You just got to learn to operate a little bit differently next time around, hopefully.
Definitely.
So we were talking about faith and trust being synonymous. Honesty and genuineness, I would say, are also synonymous. So I try to be genuine, and I think that people in turn just assume that I'm honest because they can tell that I'm being myself.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's the two different definitions of genuine. Being genuine, it's synonymous again with being honest, but then there's genuine as in being true, which I guess could also be a synonym of honesty. But you know, being true to yourself, being a genuine human being, being a kind human being, whatever word you want to put on it, having that positive energy and those positive intentions and those positive efforts are the easiest way to promote a trusting environment and gain other people's trust, and show them that you're honest. Because when you share things about yourself, or you show a smile, you show your emotions, people appreciate that, and it brings their walls down, it brings their guard down a little bit, because they can show that you're being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And there is a level of vulnerability that is required to develop trust.
Man, yeah, that's a very good point. That vulnerability is huge, and I think that's why sometimes as like a masculine person, when you're strong, working out all the time, you see yourself as like a big dude, strong dude, the leader of your family, and all these types of things. It's so easy for us to just like look at everybody standoffish and be like, you know what, I can't trust you, I can't trust you, I can't trust you.
Yeah.
Because it almost becomes like a primal thing. It becomes like you're trying to take away from my survival, and I can't interact with you.
Yeah.
And I think we've been tricked to think that way, man, because the people who are successful, they use people as resources. And the more people they're able to use as resources, the more resources come back to them. Right? So honestly, our culture, you could say like the African-American pop culture, is a culture of distrust. We don't trust anything. We don't even trust each other. We exalt ops. We exalt having oppositions. We exalt having enemies and violence that gets used, right?
Right.
We think that it's cool to hurt. We think that it's cool to be somebody you're supposed to be afraid of. And I'm not saying this for everyone. I'm just talking about like the pop culture, what you see in the media, what you hear in the music and the movies. And even what some of the kids think is cool to mimic, right? I work with kids all the time that have a perfectly fine environment, but they want to come off like they're so hard. They want to come off like they're dangerous. And I'm like, why do you want to do that? Because what you're doing is walking right back into slavery with your feeling of being dangerous. Because if you do go do something dangerous, now you're in prison.
Right.
And the 13th Amendment says that now you can legally be a slave.
Right.
So, wow, you just tricked yourself right back into slavery, bro, because you think you're dangerous. Yeah, and it's honestly kind of frustrating to me, but I just wonder, like, when are we going to stop seeing violence and danger as something that's cool instead of something that's traumatizing? I'm going to tell you a quick story. This one kid was trying to tell me about these bars that he wrote, and all his bars had to do with how he was going to, like, AR, Swiss cheese the ops, you know, like AR left him bloody and down. And he's telling me these bars, and I'm sitting there, what I mean is lyrics to a song. He's telling me these lyrics to a song, and even if it's art, I was like, hey, did you write a song about how that person's mom felt after you killed him? And he just looked at me and was like, why would you say that? And I was like, why would you say that? Like, you were the one that brought this energy up. You're talking about killing people. I'm asking, did you think about what his mom and grandma felt? You think about what his family felt after you put holes in his shirt.
Yeah.
And he's just standing there like, I don't know why you would take it there. I'm like, bro, you took it there. Like, I didn't take it there.
Yeah. You got to think about the whole picture, right?
That's what I'm saying.
And it's interesting because some artists do acknowledge that, and it's almost even darker when they do. Like 21 Savage says, we send teddy bears every time we make their mamas cry.
I know. Dark part.
Wow. Yikes. And, you know, you just hear that in the flow of a song. It doesn't sound that bad. And you think about it, you're like, ooh, that's like really messed up. And there's a lot of music, those subliminal messages, right? And then, again, our youth, they see these and they're not able to discern between that information. They don't understand that a lot of these guys rapping about those things aren't really about that life. They don't understand that those things don't get you to fame and fortune and being a successful rapper. They just get you locked up being in prison writing those rhymes in a cell.
Man.
Right?
Exactly.
And it's unfortunate that it's so difficult to see the negative effect of some of those behaviors because some people do get rewarded for those things. And those are the ones who get all the attention, and it can easily misconstrue the situation that we're putting all of our youth in.
Definitely. And it's a deeper link. You know, I have these conversations all the time. There's a reason why this song is in your iPhone. There's a reason why this energy is front and center instead of the loving, healing energy that your parents wish you would pick up on. There's a reason why it's more accessible. There's a reason why a bag of chips is $1.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a reason why these things that are going to harm you are way easier to get.
Yeah. And I don't want people to think that we don't listen to rap music and don't listen to anything that talks about killing or... We have the discernment. We have the background knowledge and the understanding, and we choose wisely of when we allow those, lyrics to enter our ears, and when we sing certain songs, and all of those factors are important as well. Because at the end of the day, it is art, right? It is, and it's public, and I know people that make music that talks about these things. I have family members that make music that are along these lines, and I support them. But I am also aware of those words, and I'm aware of the effect that they have. So, again, there has to be balance between the two. I also listen to reggae, and reggae don't talk about that at all.
Nah.
So, if I was just all day listening to this music, sitting in a dark room and blasting it with my windows down, I used to do that. Blast aggressive music with my windows down. Try to look hard, like that. That's just it puts you in a state where, again, you're not being genuine. No. You're trying to be something that's being fed to you.
Yeah.
You're trying to be an image that has basically been developed as an institution. Like there's an institution of music that's trying to institutionalize a group of people and make you think that it's okay to operate in this aggressive, hateful fashion.
For sure. And we're right back to the idea of the new Jim Crow, because it's a caricature, right? And this is to our identity episode. You go check out No ID if you want to get deeper into what we're talking about right now, because it's all in that episode. So I guess the only thing I'm trying to illustrate with that is you could have reasons you don't trust because of your own history, and then you could possibly be tricked into not trusting the environment from the culture that you're raised up in and
Mm-hmm.
the things that you're exposed to, the media, everything you've consumed,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. I mean, think about the people that keep all their money under a mattress,
Mm,
right? Like, oh, I can't trust the banks. I was like, well, you're not completely wrong because banks are failing, but at the same time, it's probably not a good idea to have all your money in your mattress because floods happen, fires happen. So you have to, again, have discernment, make an informed decision with whatever you're doing, and weigh in all the factors of the situation.
that's a great point because that's being afraid of that anomaly that is going to occur. The
Mm.
Great Depression happened, a bunch of people lost all their money in their banks, but that's still an anomaly because for the majority of time, their money was okay.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So if you get caught up on an anomaly that occurred and then you start being afraid of everything,
Hmm.
you're just diminishing the quality of your life.
Right. And then so, like for instance, I don't know if you've seen this, Giannis
Mm,
Antetokounmpo, he has like 40 different bank accounts.
mm,
And the reason he did that is because he wanted to be able to trust that his money was going to be safe, that it would be insured. And he learned about FDIC insurance, which insures up to $250,000. He's like, well, I have way more money than that.
mm,
So how am I going to make sure my money's okay? So he splits it up into a bunch of different accounts that are all maxed out at $250,000. And
mm,
then he is insured that in the case of an event with the banks, at least he has insurance, because if he were to have $1 million account, he's only going to get 25% of that
mm.
instead.
Yeah.
So again, bringing that education in and then finding a way to trust the system or the people that you're interacting with, at least to that certain percentage, right?
Hmm.
Because Giannis probably still doesn't have 100% trust in the bank, but he put himself in a situation where he can hopefully be like around 90%,
Hmm.
and I guess time would fill in the rest of that 10%,
Yeah.
because they say time heals all. And when trust is broken, it can often take a lot of time to rebuild that trust.
Hundreds of years sometimes,
Mm,
hundreds of years sometimes.
telling me, I I think that having trust is a privilege, because some people do grow up in environments where they can't trust anybody.
Hmm.
They've been taken advantage by everyone that's had their trust,
Yeah.
and there's just not a positive environment for them to try to thrive in, and it develops this paranoia, right?
Hmm.
And nobody wants to be paranoid, and extended period of paranoia can easily push someone into a mental health disorder. And we have triggers that are underlying when we have these breaks, or these emotional outbreaks sometimes, because even someone that doesn't have a mental disease, they can have these times where they feel very weak and they feel very vulnerable, and they kind of act out, and they're out of character, and usually it's stemmed from either a traumatic event or something very unexpected.
Mm.
And usually, when those things take place, trust is broken in some way or another. Right?
Hmm. Mm.
I think that's a general way to look at how our trauma can put us in a situation where we don't feel that we can develop trust.
Yeah. And that gets into such difficult waters, man. Because you don't ever want to blame someone for what's happened to them, but you want to encourage them to be super accountable to make
Mm,
sure that the next generation doesn't have to feel that vibe.
yeah.
Because it's like generational trauma, breaking chains. We're all here to break chains, but it can be sad sometimes when you're talking with someone who completely doesn't feel like the chain that is meant for them to break, they don't feel like it's fair.
Hmm.
It's unfair that I have to break this generational chain. Like, why would I have all this sin and all this pain placed upon me? And it's like, yeah, true. It's not fun, but if you're gonna reproduce and keep going, it's a great responsibility.
And some people will break a chain on one side just to find that they're attached to another on the other side, right? You can't. solve a problem just to create another problem.
Man.
And I've seen that happen in the hospital too. Sometimes we get just stacking on medication. We're going to treat their blood pressure. Like, oh, well, now their blood pressure is too low. Like, we need to put them on vasopressors. Like, oh, their blood pressure is too high. Like, oh, they're having a behavioral outbreak. We need to control their behavior. Like, oh, they're too sedated. Now their blood pressure is going down again. Like, so you get in kind of this cycle where you're trying to fix all these problems and you just have to take a step back, look at the situation, see maybe that solution wasn't the best. Maybe we need to remove our solutions before we add another solution, right? And I think a good example for that in real life situation, everybody thinks that money is going to solve all their problems, but I've seen a lot of wealthy people that let their health slip away. And then what is money going to do for you if you're not healthy, if you're in the hospital, if you feel terrible, if you're depressed, if you can't move, there's no amount of money that's going to make your quality of life any better. So we just again have to trust that all of the decisions we're making are putting us in the best situation to live our best lives. And there's not one solution that's going to make that happen.
For sure.
Right.
And then I'm gonna add one layer to that. When things start to look brighter and when things start to work out and you feel that progress, trust that you did that. You know what I'm saying? Trust that your work did that. I'll see this sometimes. I'll see someone starting to reach the goals that we set to work towards, and they're like, nah, somebody helped me. Like, this wasn't all me. I must have got lucky. I must have these things. And I'm like, nah, dude, check this. You did that. You put that work in and then got rewards from it. And you got to pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? You got to really be. Drake has a line where he was like, celebrating all your first downs like their touchdowns bring a price. And I do believe that. If you made an incremental step and you act like you just won the championship, that can be detrimental. But if you are striding towards a goal and you make an incremental step, recognize that you did that. Because the touchdown and then ultimately the championship is only going to come by you developing that internal locus of control. Everything I'm doing, I'm reaping.
Yeah.
And as things start to get better, that's a whole nother side of trauma. It doesn't always have to be that we think things are going to be bad. It's that we don't believe that we're making it good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then I'm glad you put it that way because, you know, there's people that think God never answers their prayers, but there's also people that think God has done everything in their life and that they haven't actually done anything themselves. And that's why I like to remind people that God's not going to build the house. He's just going to give us the supplies and the tools. And it's our job to build and actually put in the work. So like you said, you have to pat yourself on the back because you had to put in the effort. And we have free will to fail, right? Free will to succeed. So when there is an outcome, that is you doing it, right?
Yeah.
We are thankful to God for giving us the opportunity and putting us in the situation. But at the end of the day, it's you that made the accomplishment and it's you that should be able to rejoice and it's you that should be celebrated. I think that, you know, having this conversation has helped me realize where I can, I guess, optimize my trust and maybe where I need to pull back a little bit on my trust. Because I think there's only so much trust you can give, right? You can't be 100% trusting in everything and everyone that is walking about. So I would invite everyone to use your discernment and distribute your trust accordingly.
For sure. And be patient, you know, be patient with people. It's not your place to make them come to the level you want them to be at.
Right.
You need to be patient with people and just show them love and have trust that the sun will come out tomorrow. You know, that's one thing you can always believe in. Tomorrow will happen.
How was that play?
What play?
Didn't you see Annie?
I did. It was beautiful, dude. It made me feel so many different emotions, man, because first of all, it started off so sad. The opening scene, like all these little girls in their orphanage, and Annie comes out telling her story about how my parents dropped me off here, but they're for sure coming back. And all the other little girls start clowning her, like, you live in an illusion. Your parents aren't coming back. And Annie's like, yeah, I have hope. That's what y'all don't have. Like, y'all just as salty because you don't have hope and I do. I was sitting there watching that like, man, that's deep. That's so deep. She was able to keep this like light inside of her, all just because of hope of something that she remembered from like 12 years ago. Faith.
Trust.
Man, trust. And whether it was real or not, it kept her soul alive.
Yeah.
That hit me. I was like, man, you could be in the lowliest situation, but if you have trust that the sun will come out tomorrow, if you have trust that that horizon is still there for you to overcome, you're still living.
From one of the most vulnerable positions possible, right? A young girl, like
a young orphan who is literally in this world with no anchor, floating around.
Nice.
And not only that, but the person who was taking care of her was a tyrant, making her clean at 5 a.m. and yelling at her, cracking whips, a straight tyrant. She was able to overcome all of that with some trust and faith in tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was wanting to stand up and applaud right from the beginning. I was like, I'm already in this. That was one of the coolest things I've seen, man. I've never seen that movie or play, so I was unaware of what that story is, and it's beautiful. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. Trust. Tomorrow's happening, yo.
Right. So shout out Annie. The sun will come up, God willing. And again, we got to thank God for the opportunity for us to have this stimulating conversation. Thank God for bringing my brother Russ into my life, 2007. Never forget. Here we are today. And just so grateful being able to grow alongside one another and, pick his brain and, now share these ideas and these messages with an audience. And we are so grateful for all the support we've had. Please like, subscribe, and share whatever platform you're on. Share with one friend if you got anything out of today. That's all we ask. And last I checked, we're at 99 followers on Instagram. We're almost to that 100. So we'll have to have a little some type of acknowledgement because that's a big milestone for us. And really all we want to do is have the opportunity to have a positive influence on as many people as possible and just kind of morph mindsets into being more unified and a little more altruistic and ultimately spread love and promote happiness. And I think that we are off to a good start so far. And I guarantee you we just getting started. So we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.